Welcome to another episode of Our American Dreams. I'm Dr. Scott Stornetta, and we're interviewing a set of people that, in our estimation, are among the most honest and wise in the nation. And we want to give them opportunity to talk as we move into this celebration of the 250th anniversary of the creation of the United States of America. We want to give each of these figures the opportunity to share their thoughts about the American dream in general and their personal experiences with it through people they've known, situations they've observed, and the challenges and successes of their own lives. And I have with me today Harris Simmons, whom I'm not going to begin to even list his accomplishments, but all you'd have to do is Google Harris Simmons and you'd find out pretty quickly um, who the world thinks of him as being a fairly prominent individual. But we're putting all that aside and we're just focusing on our dreams and the honest and the wise. Harris, it's a pleasure to have you on, and I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to give us this time.
Well, thank you very much, Scott.
Um, we always start, Harris, because we want to keep this discussion not entirely philosophical, but also grounded in real and actual people and real and specific experiences. And so I always start off by saying, is there someone you have known personally, perhaps an ancestor or a relative from a previous generation, that you admire as one who really epitomized realizing their American dream?
Well, I can think of a great many, including my father, but I'm going to talk about somebody else. I've spent my career in the banking business, and I've had the extraordinary privilege of knowing hundreds, maybe thousands of entrepreneurs, people uh, who've built businesses, built other kinds of organizations. Um, But as I was thinking about this, my mind goes to someone who in the state of Utah where I live was well known. He's gone now, though his widow is still a very prominent figure here in the Salt Lake area, and that's Larry H. Miller. Larry Miller um, grew up poor, not abjectly poor, but on certainly on the kind of the poorer side of the other side of the tracks, if you will. Here in Salt Lake City, loved softball, loved played baseball. Went up to West High School here. Um, he eventually he was also a car guy, and eventually went to Denver, Colorado with his young wife, Gail, became the manager of the parts department in a Toyota dealership. Found his way back to Salt Lake, raised a family, and acquired an initial car dealership, a Toyota dealership, that my bank helped finance, uh, and he worked his tail off. He was an amazing character. Had a mind for numbers that was unlike anything I've ever known. Uh, but worked, and over the course of the years that I knew Larry, he went from a single dealership to having, I think, more than 3 dozen ultimately.
And I'm
Uh,
just curious, is that original dealership still in existence?
oh yeah, yeah, and it's
And
still
where,
part of the
where is it
Larry H. Miller
located?
Group. Now the automotive business, the family sold, 3 or 4 years ago to a big national concern, but
What was that particular location? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's out in Murray. It's on about 50 around 56 South and State Street.
Right.
And
Anyway, I didn't mean to
uh,
interrupt your flow,
no,
but
that's fine.
I think
Um,
listeners might just enjoy the particulars.
yeah. Uh, anyway, he became the largest car dealer here in Utah and beyond, with operations around the Western United States. Along the way, he acquired the Utah Jazz basketball team, the Salt Lake Bees baseball, AAA baseball team, uh, developed a chain of movie theaters, had a variety of business interests. And one of the things I loved about Larry and his wife Gail, Gail remains a good friend and an incredibly uh, great heart. Both of them did. Gail and her remarried to Kim Wilson, but Gail and Kim are just incredible um, examples to everybody here in the state of Utah. She's the state's conscience, I think. But they, along with all of his financial prosperity, uh, Larry helped all kinds of people along the way. As a banker, we get a call asking. He said, "Look, I'd like to. I've got an employee that has a need. They've got a medical problem. So I want to guarantee the loan. I want to." So he, he'd also give, just make make gifts to people, but he'd also make it possible for them to feel like they were getting themselves out of the hole, if you will. And anyway, just he's an exceptional story. But I can think of, I mean, one of the beauties of the business I'm in is I get to see that kind of thing all day long. And it's not, these aren't just isolated, just exceptions. Uh, these kinds of stories are more routine, sometimes on a smaller scale. But it's the beauty of it's the beauty of the nation we live in is that people can start from nothing like that. My own father, who was orphaned twice, came to Salt Lake City as an 8-year-old orphan, and worked any number of jobs. Ended up, uh, becoming the state bank commissioner. Helped start a bank, got some equity in it. Uh, Ultimately, was able to acquire Zion's First National Bank, the interest that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints had in it, together with a couple of partners. And it's a company that I now lead. And from beginnings that were as close to nothing as I can imagine, uh, he was able to create something that for his family and to help any number of people along the way. And that's what characterizes so many of these people, builders, is that they're not, it's not just about them. It's what they do with their resources and help others along the way.
Yeah. It's really interesting when you were describing Larry Miller, how it was clear that, while he was achieving what many would consider material success, you could also see his character unfolding.
Yep.
And that was part of the realization of the dream, is that he had more so he could offer more.
Yeah, I think often people who start with very little, they never forget that, and they want to they have a very innate desire to help others who have very little, and it's it's a beautiful part of the process.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go over to you yourself? Um, Again, we call this podcast Our American Dreams because, in my opinion, each person has their own sort of take about what the American dream means to them. Can you talk at whatever level of candor you'd choose about your own American dream and how it is played out both with successes by whatever measure you want to make, but as well as with challenges and setbacks.
Well, sure. It's noted. I grew up in a banking family, and my my father put me to work the week after I turned 16 years old. He took me down down and signed me up and had me working down in the basement of the bank here, filing canceled checks. And
So you really were in the mailroom.
I was next door to it. It was it was work. It was no more glamorous than delivering the mail for sure. I worked through a variety of jobs, summers during high schools, through college, after working afternoons while I was going to college, and I'd had the good fortune. I mean, one of the really pieces of good fortune I had was I uh, I had a I had parents who really valued education. I was when I was 12 years old. My father had me back in Boston. We were on the campus of Harvard Business School, and I determined right there and then I said, "This is where I want to go to school." My dad actually he sent me a postcard after we returned home, and it said, and it was a picture of the Baker Library at Harvard Business School, and he back the card he said, "Well, I'll see you here June 5th, 1980." And he'd taken the time to figure out when, if I went to business school, I'd probably graduate and when commencement was even going to be. And then on June 1980, there I stood in the cap and gown uh, on that very spot and with my dad, my brothers. And, but importantly, the thing about a dream is dreams have to be dreamt. And um, I was really blessed to actually have something, some spark in my mind at the age of 12 that I wanted to, that was a goal.
Something to aspire
And,
to.
and so it provided purpose to my, as I was working my way through school, I had, I had a goal in mind and I got there. I wrote case studies for a great professor, Charlie Williams. We became good friends. Uh, I had all kinds of other experiences. It led to opportunities to work in banking in Norway and Texas, and but ultimately at a young age coming back here to what had kind of been the family business was now a public company. And at a young age of 27, becoming the chief financial officer. And that's not something that I think I found myself dreaming of when I was a kid. But as I went through school, and your perspectives start to, the focus starts to sharpen. I realized I really enjoyed the business side and felt like I understood how it creates value in ways for customers, for investors, for employees, and so it's been a great life. I've spent most of my career doing a lot of deals, expanding our scope across the Western United States, and I found it incredibly fulfilling, satisfying, both working with a lot of great customers and watching, being a partner as we with our folks and as we partner in helping people build businesses and accomplish their financial goals, but also in being able to work side by side with thousands of just incredibly great people. So it's been a lot of fun.
I particularly key off of a phrase you used earlier about creating value and creating value all around. I think, well, I don't want to be negative, but I think many people don't understand how essential capital is to helping to create value and let people realize their dreams. I think they just assume sometimes that there's sort of this group of people that have enormous wealth, and it really shouldn't be that way because they should be helping others. Whereas real laissez-faire economies, we create value by combining together.
Oh, we do indeed. And partnering, and we have a particular, in my business, we have a particular focus on helping to finance small businesses. There's
Mhm.
nothing, I, I tell my, the people I work with, the bankers around here, that the most satisfying thing they'll do, it's not, providing financing to some Fortune 500 company. They don't really need us. They, all kinds of opportunities for them to find capital, but helping somebody who's trying to get a business started, and they put all of their sweat and, their mortgage, their house and everything. And we have a we have a we have a goal here. One of our guiding principles is to help people become financially stronger. We're really wary of trying to get, because debt can also ruin people.
Mhm.
And so using it responsibly, it can be a powerful thing for good, and not used responsibly, the opposite. And so,
Yeah.
um, but what we do as bankers is we're the stewards of a lot of the savings in the community, and how that gets transformed into productive investment that creates opportunity and economic well-being and security for people. It's not just the wealth; it's also the security of knowing that you're providing for your kids for generations to come, and building the kind of the kind of world you hope that will leave their lives better than yours is.
Yeah. Well, again, it's just a wonderful set of experiences that you've had. And yet I imagine that um, over the years, over the decades, you've also been an astute observer of America. And there must be some things that strike you as being not not yet quite right there. Uh, and so that's what leads to our third question, which is our magic wand or genie out of the bottle question. And that is, can you imagine one thing in American life that, were it to change, would allow more people to realize their own American dream?
Yeah. Well, I'll start by saying, as a banker, one of the things I understand the power of is compounding, is compound interest, um, and it's an incredibly powerful force. By the way, if you do start doing the math, I mean, you can, but one of the things, an analog to it is that to make compounding work for you, you need to start early and be consistent. Start saving early, be consistent at it. Over time, you'll be financially secure. And by the same token, I think that the most important thing that we can do to help assure that dreams are possible for our kids is to be sure that quality education is available at a very early age, and that we have educators that create high expectations for our kids. One of the greatest blessings I ever had from two or three of the great teachers in my life was they all had the common thread of having high expectations of me. Um, my parents did, and it wasn't in an uncomfortable and a gnawing kind of pressured way. It was helping, it was simply helping me to understand that my idea of what was good enough wasn't wasn't good enough. And so it was a commitment to excellence. So if there's one thing I could do, uh, I had the experience of chairing our state's Board of Regents, Board of Higher Education, if you will. And 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 one of the things is it just struck me, we have most of our kids in public schools, the majority of them, when they graduate high school, are not doing math, they're not reading at grade level. They don't have the kind of proficiency that you would expect. You know, only about a third of them do. And that snuffs out a lot of dreams because, like, going back to the power of compounding, if you can dream and dream early and have people who have high expectations of you, uh, it's quite amazing what the trajectory looks like relative to people who don't have that early on or who never have it at all. So that would be
That would be your
my
wave the
wish.
magic wand.
Yeah.
You know, it reminds me of a story, and I know that I emphasize to the people I interview that they should give details and specifics to make the story vivid, and I'm going to go against my advice. I'm going to abstract away some of the details of the story just to protect the innocent and maybe the guilty as well. At any rate, this story boiled down to someone asking what the difference between a good leader and a great leader was. And it was a rhetorical question. They supplied their own answer. They said, a good leader, after you've known them for a few years, um, you just can't talk enough about them, about just how wonderful they are. But a great leader, after you've known them, sorry, for a few years,
Right.
says, now I understand what I can be.
Huh.
It's almost as if the leader disappears because they instill in the people they're leading the sense of what they can become.
Yeah. Huh.
Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, a little off tangent, but we're doing the podcast. I thought I'd throw it in.
That's nice.
Okay, well, let me come to what's really the final question before I give you carte blanche to say anything that you want. And that is, you know, it's so difficult today because of mass media and social media. Again, I'm not trying to suggest that everything about that is bad, but it's so difficult to separate the image of someone from the reality or to see behind the image that is carefully crafted to the real character of the person underneath. And so we ask this question in our search to locate the truly honest and wise. Who is the most honest and wise living individual that you know personally? Not that you read about them in the newspaper or you saw something on them, but that through personal experience you can say, this is an honest and wise person. Is there
Yeah.
somebody that comes to mind?
I had the opportunity many years ago to become acquainted with Dale Redland. And I was serving a mission for my church over in Sweden for 2 years. And Dale was there as well. He'd actually spent time there as a youngster with his parents. And and I've stayed in touch with him off and on over the years and watched as somebody who I knew back when I was 20 years old. He was someone um, who was as honest and wise and committed to doing things in an excellent way as perhaps anybody I know. And I
Any
followed.
particular example come to mind from those earlier years? Something that just
Oh,
kind of struck you?
he was meticulous in the way he dressed, and it wasn't to, as a way of being showy to other people. That's just who he was. It's how he wanted to represent himself uh, as as a missionary, as an ambassador of his Lord. And he went on to become a very successful doctor. He was a heart transplant surgeon and would have applied that same meticulous, caring kind of approach to the way he practiced medicine, but also found himself living a life of service and ultimately was called to be uh, a member of the quorum of the 12 apostles in my church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And he, um, and I love the way he understands that all of us are just common people. He teaches great lessons. I think often of something he said about trying to see other people the way, through God's eyes.
Mm.
And it's my belief, I think about that daily. If I've tried to make it as much a habit as I can with people that I might disagree with, people that I may not like otherwise, et cetera. I find it to be one of the wisest pieces of advice I think I've received in my life in terms of making me appreciate other people and making me a better person in the process. So anyway, that's a name that comes to mind.
All right. Well, that's the name that we want to hear. Again, we're trying to cut away through all of the varnish of public images and talk about actual experience, someone that you knew,
Yeah,
very early in their development, and you already could see these qualities in them. It's a great,
yeah.
it's a great story. Um, let's go to the closer, which is just an open-ended um, invitation to you. Is there a final thought you'd like to be able to share with the American people? I know that used to be an old McKinsey consulting question to say, before we end this interview, think for a moment where you're going to be a half an hour from now while you're kind of going over what you've said and say, and it's only at that point that you think, what I should have said was this. And the McKinsey question was, think about it now and tell us now what your final thought is to share with the American people.
Well, I think it would be this. I mean, we live in a country and at a time when I think there a lot of people feel a sense of despair about polarization and can sometimes feel chaotic. We don't have the kind of traditional media that we could rely on. People are, the very, questions about what's true. Uh, Something that you are very much focused on. Um, and yet we live in an amazing country. And the founders of this country got it right. Um, and creating a government where that's proved to be remarkably resilient. We've been through these kinds of things before. Jacksonian America was very much like today, I think, complete with a stolen election, I think 1834. Uh, uh, anyway, claims by Jackson that it was stolen. So a lot of this isn't new. I had the experience a few years ago. I've had the experience a couple times in my life of actually helping to get something done in Congress. And when people say it takes an act of Congress, that's sometimes meant to mean it's just impossible, almost impossible. What I've learned is actually possible.
Mm.
That I had the experience most recently, I guess, back in about 2018. I was working on getting some changes made to a piece of financial legislation that it's called the Dodd-Frank Act, was passed in 2011, and even one of the named signatories to that bill, Barney Frank, whose name was on the bill, ultimately said, we got it wrong. But it's really hard to change a piece of recently passed legislation, and this was only 7 years later. But it was doing a lot of damage to to parts of my industry, including my own company, unnecessarily. And I went to Washington on several occasions. I met with over 100 members of Congress, both parties. And I wish I, I consistently found myself wishing my kids could be along with me to understand what an amazing opportunity it is to actually go in and make your case and get something done. And I had people who agreed with me, who didn't agree with me. I found myself getting Democrats on a bill that a lot of Democrats said, no, we just can't change that legislation that they passed. Um, and and most importantly, I found that people that I disagreed with, that I had this predetermined, I determined that they had political views very different from my own. That when you actually sat down and spent time with them, I still don't agree with them politically, but I call them my friends.
Mm.
And if we can, if we can do that, if we can believe that we can disagree and still be friends, and that sometimes people will come around to our way of thinking, and sometimes we'll come around to theirs. Uh, we'll be reminded. I mean, we will find our way to making sure that the best thing that's ever been created in the way of people governing themselves will still be around for a very, very long time. So that's my hope, and my experience is that it can happen, and that there are a lot of people of goodwill. They may not think like we do, but we all have some core values, and we need to hold true to those.
Well, that is a wonderful story and a very concrete example. I wish I had been in those fly on the wall. You talk about you wish your kids were there. I wish I'd been there. Well, I want to thank you, Harris, for taking the time to share a little bit about how you see the American dream, what it takes to expand that opportunity to others. And
Well, I'm honored to be asked.
I hope we can have some good come out of that. Thank you so very much. This has been another edition of Our American Dreams. And I'm Scott Stornetta. Thank you.